And that's our chicken reminder that we are ready to go with today's webinar. Welcome everybody to Cloud Education Solutions bi-weekly webinar, I should say. Today I'm really excited to have a special guest, Patrick McGrath from EquatIO and actually from TextHelp, which is the company that owns and operates EquatIO and makes it available to the world. Patrick is going to be speaking to us about Math Made Digital. A very quick plug for Cloud Education Solutions for those of you who might be new to our webinar series. We're Google for Education's preeminent partner in South Africa. And we offer all kinds of professional development from basics training on Google Workspace to more advanced pedagogical modules having to do helping teachers adopt their technology, all the way to project-based learning. We can do pretty much anything to help your school achieve its educational technology goals. So feel free to visit our website, get in touch with me. There's a form there on the website. And I think most of you already have contact with me in one way or another and know how to get a hold of me. So without further ado, Patrick, I'm going to stop sharing and let Deirdre take over and bring you up. Patrick is, as I mentioned, with TextHelp. I'm going to just, for the sake of time, Patrick, let you introduce yourself.
No problem.
And save the long bio as we usually do here in South Africa. We'll be a little more informal and let the focus be on the teaching and learning.
I do, as you know, Kevin, I do many presentations, and that bio bit is always difficult. I don't think I've ever been preceded or introduced by a chicken timer. So
I'm
you
glad we could
definitely
do a first.
So my first takeaway, aside from anything teaching and learning that we're going to go through today, is absolutely get a chicken timer for my next broadcast. Love it. So thank you. And thanks, Kevin and the team there at CloudEd for the opportunity to speak to all of you today. I'm coming to you today live and online from Belfast. In Northern Ireland, and it is remarkably a sunny day here in Belfast, which I never get to say very often. But Belfast is the headquarters for a little company that you may or may not have heard of called TextHelp, and I am the EdTech strategist here at TextHelp. And the short version of what I do is I just focus on teaching and learning. So I'm not in the sales side. I'm not here to push anything. All I'm here to do is to go through one of our products today, which is a product called EquatIO, and see how we can translate that tool in order to positively impact both, in this case, teaching and also in learning. I put my email address and also my Twitter handle on the bottom of this slide, so do feel free to reach out after today on either of those means. I'd love a follow on Twitter if you can, or just an email would be super. And if you haven't heard from TextHelp, which I alluded to previously, we are probably, our marketing team really don't like me for this, but we're probably one of the largest small technology companies you've never heard of. And I really hope you have. Our Google Extension, as an example, are in use by over 40 million students across the globe. So things like reading, writing, literacy support. But today we're going to be focusing directly on maths. And we're going to be looking at this Google extension called EquatIO. Now, I'll explain a little bit about this as we go, but we're really going to be looking at how we can easily create maths, how we can easily create graphs and diagrams, use manipulatives for younger students to help them explore maths concepts. And we're going to be able to do that in things like Google Docs. We're going to be able to do it in Google Forms, on Jamboard, across the whole sphere of G Suite applications. And so hopefully you'll see that EquatIO will make it easy and also give you a powerful Google extension that can plug right in and help you across both maths and science. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through just a couple of quick slides just to frame and have a little think about maths and the challenges that we have. And then what I really want to get to is the live piece where I'll open a Google Doc and we'll look at the tools themselves, and then we'll see how we can actually apply those tools in a proper teaching and learning context. How can we deliver on assessment? How can we deliver on accessibility? What can we do with all those past papers and those PDFs that we have that we really need to be able to use maths with? So let's skip through some slides as we go. And this is one slide that remains on my deck in almost every maths session that I run. And if you're a maths teacher, if you're a science teacher, if you're thinking about your students and how they learn online or on devices, And if you were to say to them, I want you to solve a quadratic equation, 3 or 4 lines of maths maybe. And if you were to say, I need you to type this out into a Google document, then you'd have some challenges there because there are no easy ways to do that. Yes, in Google Docs, for example, we have maybe equation editor. And in equation editor, to do 3 or 4 lines of maths, it's quite painful and it's quite challenging because we've got our large screen area with lots of buttons. We've got to find the right notation. We've got to put it in. It's painfully slow. And we're aware of that. And that's why we built this tool called EquatIO. We wanted to make it easy. We wanted to make it accessible. And we wanted to make sure, most of all, that it wasn't painful. Now, today I'm going to be going through the EquatIO extension and also the EquatIO web app. So there's 2 parts to EquatIO that we're going to very quickly run through. So we're going to be looking at that solely today and exclusively in Chrome. But don't forget that as text help, we put everything cross-platform. So the same tools that you're going to see is also available on all of the other platforms and mobile devices as well. So what you see here today will be working directly and exclusively within the Chrome browser. But of course, that's available across the board. And there are some other icons on this slide that I just want to very quickly draw your attention to. Because as we go through some of the tools that we have on EquatIO, you'll find that we touch on lots of different media types where maths might occur. So for example, in images, how could we use a tool in order to provide accessible maths from images? Or if we're a teacher, how could we take a photograph of, say, a digital workbook or of an interactive whiteboard or a blackboard, and how could we turn that into digital content that we can actually use properly with our students? So in pictures on the web, how can we grab maths from the web, or how can we make it accessible? From a video, what if you've got a Khan Academy video and you've saw a particular problem or a solution there on this Khan Academy video? You want to get that for your students. Well, you could send them the video, but maybe you want to send them an alternative question and around that. Well, EquatIO could be used to take maths right out of a video and add it into a Google document. Also PDFs. So if you think about things like past papers or booklets or practice papers or worksheets or downloadable resources, a lot of these come in PDF format. So what about maths within there? How could we use that maths, and perhaps instead of putting it on a PDF, how could we put that into a Google form as an example, a more flexible way to answer that question and importantly to assess it? Paper. What if a student wants to handwrite maths? It's more important and it's easier for them. It helps their understanding to handwrite on a bit of paper. Well, EquatIO will also give them a tool to be able to photograph that maths and turn it into a digital format. And then, of course, there's Jamboard, which I'll show you a quick demo of as we go through. So if you're using Jamboard for online teaching or collaborative teaching, you'll know that it's challenging to put a protractor in there and measure an angle. It's challenging to put a multi-line equation on there or a graph. So when it comes to teaching maths, whilst we can hand draw, we can't necessarily put the right maths notation on there. So all of these areas are covered by this one tiny little extension called EquatIO that you can access later today. Now, where that's available, and I'll not bore you with the techie details on this because I really want to get into the demo, but in terms of on the Google ecosystem, so that's in slides, which is important, that's in forms, that's in sheets, that's in docs, that's on Jamboard, that's in drawings. So any part of the Google G Suite or Google Workplace for Education ecosystem, all of the apps that your students or yourself would be using, we can use maths there easily. Of course, use it on other platforms such as Windows and Mac. You'll see the web app. So that's just web access. So even if your students don't have the extension at home and we're doing perhaps some remote learning or some homework or some additional learning, they can still access all of these tools just within the Chrome web browser without installing anything else. And it's available also on an LMS. One of the things that we'll hopefully get to during the course of today is to show you also how EquatIO can fit into Google Classroom, because not only do we want to be able to show you how to create a piece of maths or how to have a student or pupil create a piece of maths or add a diagram or manipulative, but if you're a teacher and you create a wonderful maths resource, you want to be able to share that easily. And of course, many of you will be using Google Classroom. So we've built Google Classroom buttons right in the EquatIO so we can automatically share assignments and have those marked within the EquatIO ecosystem. So there's full integration there. And the only purpose in that is to make it easy for you to share and easy for a pupil to return their work when they've used all the brilliant tools in EquatIO to complete that maths piece. So before we jump into the demo, I want to give you a quick background on what you're going to see. So as I've said before, EquatIO is a Google extension. So it's going to be there when you need it. So when we've got a Google Doc, we can open the EquatIO extension and we get access to what is in effect a range of maths tools that we can use within that current document. And it operates as a toolbar, and you're going to see it opening at the bottom of my screen in a couple of minutes from now. But really, all I've done on your screen right now is maximize and blow up that toolbar so we can talk through it a little bit. So I'm going to show you each of these in action. And so if we start left to right here, things like the ability to type maths, but not type maths in that way where if we want x squared, we've got to go and find the 2, and then we've got to go to the menu and put it up to a superscript and format it, and then possibly leave that formatting in place for the next variable that we put into that particular equation. So we want to make it easy. So with this, we've built in prediction. So we can start to type letters of maths notation and it will be portrayed on screen. So your squared, x squared, you can start to type SQ and you'll see that it becomes x squared. And I'll show you that as we go. The ability to pop in graphs, the ability to handwrite. So if you're on a Chromebook or any form of touchscreen device, Chromebook or otherwise, as long as you're using the Chrome browser, you can give your pupils the ability to simply handwrite maths with a stylus or a fingertip, and that will be turned into a digital format. They could also dictate, so simply speak maths, and they could dictate maths answers directly into any of those Google pieces. They could photograph maths with the mobile tool. They can access MathSpace, which is the little cube there with a symbol in the middle of it. That's where we draw diagrams and access manipulatives. So things like protractors or fraction shapes of pulleys, if you're a science teacher. All of those shapes are built right in and you have access to. Then we've got Screenshot Reader. Great ability, provides students with a great ability to have maths read out loud. And lastly, just so we're aware of all the tools, is what we call our STEM tools. There's lots of things hidden underneath that. Like there's a periodic table of elements, there's a molecular viewer, there's a scientific calculator. So anything that you or your students could need to complete a maths task, whatever level of maths that it's at, is all built into just those few series of buttons that you see on your screen. So a quick reminder, I've talked a lot about the fact that this is an extension. You can get this and you can try it for 30 days, and you can try that just by going to the Chrome store. You can download that extension. You can run it within the Google environment. And then obviously beyond that, by all means, talk to our friends and partners at CloudEd in order to take that forward. But you can get started straight after today. And at the end, I know Kevin's going to put up a series of links to help you get access to more resources. So in that 30-day window when you're trying out EquatIO, you can try out all of the different things that we've seen. So let's get to the important bit, which is let's get hands-on. So I have left my full screen open at the minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move through a couple of quick tabs to show you the toolbar. So I'm going to go, and I'm actually going to switch off the toolbar right now, okay? But I'm going to go into a simple Google document. And in this Google Doc, I'm going to show you just a few things that I can do with those tools that you've just seen. First thing I've got to do is I've got to enable the extension. So it's just on my extension bar, and just by clicking it once, it's going to appear here at the bottom of my screen. So you can just see me hovering over each of the buttons there that you've just seen. Now, one of the things that we've built into this, and it's just probably worth me mentioning at this stage, is there is what we call discoverability built into this, which means that if students have had this pushed to their Chrome browser and they have EquatIO built in, the next time they open a document or a web page or a PDF or a Google form that has maths content in it, we'll automatically find that maths content, and we'll give them a little subtle reminder that they can use EquatIO to help them with their math. So it's a good way to onboard students and get them in the practice of using this. So I'm going to go and I'm going to look at something simple like creating math. So let's start with the most simple thing, which is the ability to use this equation editor that you see at the bottom of your screen here. So if I were to open it, right, I can start to type something really super simple here. So I could just start to type a fraction. So I start to type 1. I'm going to do 1/3. So I could type 1/3, and I've put the forward slash to do that, but it knows I'm building a fraction. I could also, if you just see in the bottom of your screen, start to type over, because that's the language that I'm using, and I'll be able to pop that in. So now I have a nice clean fraction. If I want to add something, I could find the plus button, but I could also start to type plus. That's helping build the language of maths. And I could say 1, because I want 1/2. That's how I might say it. I can start to type the words 1, and you'll see there that at the top, the first one that comes up is 1/2. Okay. And if I want to do equals, I could press the equal sign, or I could do something like EQ for equals. And so now I've been able to type maths and fractions really quickly. So I can insert that into the document. Okay, and what it'll do, once I press the insert button, you'll see now that this maths piece is directly in here. So a couple of things that I'll show you just before we go on and look at some more stuff is that screenshot reel that we mentioned at the start will let me have that read out loud. So I can click the button and I can drag over this and I can just have that read out loud.
1/3 plus 1/2 equals.
And now I've got accessible maths. So by the very nature that I have created it in EquatIO, I've now got it accessible. But watch what else is there. Now you may not be able to see this, you just do the size of your screen. But if I were to hover over that, there's alt text within that. And actually, if you can't read that, it says 1/3 plus 1/2 equals in standardized expanded English. Why that's important, student has a screen reader and they need to listen to this back. They will be able to read that alt tag from whatever tool they're using to listen to that maths back. So there are some basic ways we can start to put maths in. Okay. Now, if we wanted to put something a little bit more advanced, okay, if we wanted to say put in some area calculations, okay, now we could say that the volume of a sphere equals 4/3. And we want to get the word pi out. So we want to type pi. And oh, there's the pi symbol coming up in the prediction. And we want to type r. And what do we need now? We need cubed. So cu. It's going to put cubed. And now what we have is the ability to type some more advanced maths. And this is going to get more advanced as we go forward, guys. So if I press the insert button, I can insert that maths directly in. It's accessible. That's the size of font that I wanted. I could have resized that. I can scale this to be as big as I want. So I've put it in a Jamboard. It's going to be pixel perfect. But let me go down and let me just move down the document and let's show you what else we could do. Perhaps we didn't know what that formula was because we're talking about volume of a sphere. But we know that it's a volume of a sphere we're looking for. How could we use prediction to help us? Well, I can start to type VOL and all of my volume calculations will appear here. So I can skip down my list and I could say, I want volume of a sphere, press enter, and it's automatically keyed directly in. So now I can start to expand this out because I can start to say, well, that's 4/3. And I'm going to say to help me multiply by, and I'm going to say pi. So I'm going to say pi and I know multiply. And I'm going to say r cubed. So r in a sense, let's say we've been given r is 3. So we'll say we know it's 9. Okay. And we can press enter and we can keep working through the problem just like we would on a regular Google Doc if we were typing. So that's easy to insert in. But what else could we do here? So let's say we're doing quadratics. So we'll do QUA and there's our quadratic formula and it's already in the document. That means that it's very easy for us now to create that full quadratic. So what we said at the start, quite difficult to do 4 or 5 lines of maths when we're using something like equation editor that requires hundreds almost of button presses, it feels like. But now we can just type line by line as a student in any way that we need. So let me just insert that so you can see that that's accessible and that's an image. But what else can we do here? Well, this maths is editable after the fact. So if we had a set of maths question and we wanted to get a student to fill out that question or amend the question, we can always go here and click on the maths and we can press edit maths and it's going to pull it right back into this window. So we could go here and we could start to change this. Okay, so for example, if I wanted to put in here and I wanted to say, well, actually my equation is going to be 4x squared plus 4x minus 4, then I could start to substitute directly within here. I can expand this window out so I can have access to as much of a canvas as I actually need here. So I'm not going to complete that one out because we've got so much stuff to go through. What I do want to mention though is we've got the ability to type. So we also have the ability to handwrite. So for example, if I open the handwriting window and all I want to do is write some maths. Now this is going to be with a mouse, so this is going to look particularly messy. Okay, so and it's going to look particularly slow, but I will start to write this out, okay, really carefully. And you'll see here that it's now writing this maths out. Now, one of the things here that's really useful is the ability to do multiple lines of math. So if I have a stylus and a touch screen, or I have any form of touchpad, I can write directly in that pad. I can expand it. And now you'll see here on the right-hand side, I can press the Insert Maths button, and you can guess what's coming next. That is directly popped in as accessible maths, as digital maths from my handwriting. And what I could also do, and I can't demo this one on StreamYard for you, but we also have speech input. So for speech input, we can say, right, well, what we want to do is enable students who perhaps aren't motivated to type or can't pick up the typing to want to handwrite. Perhaps they'll speak their maths. So they can simply press the record button right here. They can start to speak. It's going to ignore ums and ers and ams and hesitations, and it'll type out the maths as they speak it, just like voice dictation in a Google Doc. Excuse me, this will do it for maths. And when we press the Insert Maths button, that's going to go right in. So there's some simple ways to start to pop in maths, but we have more tools here that we mentioned earlier on. So we have the ability now to pop in images. So if, for example, I wanted to, I was talking about Pythagoras theorem, and I wanted to pop in a question in and around a right angle triangle. Okay, we could draw that with some of the shapes on docs, but easier, we can go down, we can press Insert Math Space. That just takes me to another Chrome tab. We can go here and we can pick from our shapes menu. There are 300 different shapes here, basically across the entire curriculum from early years all the way through to higher education. So this gives me the ability to insert anything that I might actually need here to either illustrate a maths concept or work through a problem. So I'm going to go right angle triangle. I'm going to be able to draw it really easily. I'm going to pick another shape because I want to show my students that it's a right angle triangle. So I'll pop the right angle in. I need to label it up. So I need to label up the hypotenuse here. So I'm going to label it up as C. And all I'm using are the same tools that you've just seen previously, the ability to type, or I could do this with handwriting. I'm going to say 7, and I'm going to insert this. So I'm going to be able to add labels to all of these sides. If, for example, I wanted to get them to work out an angle calculation, I could start to type in theta. And now my theta symbol appears, and now my theta symbol is going to be able to be popped right the way in here. Okay, and if I wanted to mark that out, I've also got access to freehand drawing tools, so I could mark out theta directly. Okay, so I've got the ability to draw anything I want on this canvas to help me illustrate a maths concept. Now, there are other features that we'll come to on this that you'll see, but it's very easy to insert an image. We can just search for it right away under here for the image we want. And we've got lots of things like, for example, we've got all the standard shapes, but if we wanted to pop in things like counting rods that can split down, if we wanted to, let me see, pop in, say, coins. So I'll put in some US coins here. We could pop in coins for coin activities. Whatever the level of maths that we need, we can pop it in. If, for example, you're a physics teacher or a science teacher and you want to start talking about pulleys instead of pulley problem, we've got access to these. We've got wheelbarrows, we've got images, we've got planes. Any image that could be foreseeably used to help explain a maths piece, you can get access to. Now, what I'm going to do just to keep our document clean is delete these few extras that I popped in. And I'm just going to pop it in the document by pressing the Insert button, top right-hand side. And there we go. So we've now got our image directly into the document. So imagine that to create a resource, but imagine even more so if we were to give that to a pupil to explore. We've also got graphs here as well. And I'll just put one quick one in because I want to get to our Google Forms a section. I'm hoping, Kevin, you're going to keep me right in terms of time. But I'm going to jump directly in and I'm going to go, right, what about graphs? So in graphs, I get access to a full graph editor. So I'm going to start with something really simple here, and I'm just going to plot 2 coordinates. I could put a maths question in there. I could put an equation in there. I could plot multiple lines, or I could pop in a series of data from, say, something like Google Sheets. I'm just going to change that. X marks the spot. And all I've got to do, I keep going back to the blue button. I press insert graph. And then what you'll see is that graph is now inserted directly into my maths resource. So again, sending out a task to a student, you've given them graph tools that they can start to plot from series of data, plot lines, change the scale, change the axes labels, all of the things that you'd expect them to do, they can now do directly within their Google Docs. So there's one really brilliant winner about EquatIO that people kind of forget about at times, and that's this ability to grab content from anywhere. So say you're producing a resource or you want pupils to be able to go and grab some maths pieces from the web. I can go to a web page. So this is just a Wikipedia page, obviously, because there's lots of maths on this. I can pick the most complex piece of maths here on this page. You'll see that EquatIO is already drawn around it in blue. Nothing's happened apart from it's now in blue. I can press the capture button and I can have this read out loud so it's accessible.
F of A plus the sum from.
So I know how to read that out now. But what I could also do is just capture it. Okay, and there's lots of training on this that I'm going to share with you after today. But I can capture that and I can go back to my document and I can go into my editor right here and I can just paste. So all I've done is paste. And that previously piece of complex, inaccessible maths is now in EquatIO. And if I press insert maths, you'll see when I close this little window here, it's now directly into my Google document. So wherever I want to pull maths from, I can do that. Here's an even more useful tip, all right? And this is something that I know you guys will love whenever you use EquatIO after today, hopefully. I'm going to go to, this is a PDF. This is a past paper. In the UK, this is a GCSE past paper. So this is kind of age 15 to 16, but standard question on functions. But you want to use this question and you want to use it in a Google Doc or in Jamboard, or you want to use it in a Google form, which we'll come to in a second. You can open the EquatIO toolbar. You can go to that screenshot reader that you've seen before, the one that helped us play things out loud. Click on it. And we want to grab this content right here. So we just draw this blue box around it. And what EquatIO does is it goes away, it OCRs it, and it turns it into a digital format. So I can go copy the LaTeX. I can go all the way back to my document. I can go here. I'll just get rid of the last one that was there and I can paste it. So now that question that was previously in a PDF and not a whole lot of use to me is going to go right the way into the document. Okay. So we now have this in, and there's another thing that's underneath the skin of EquatIO that people again forget about. If I go back to my functions piece and I just close that, so here's my handwritten answer that maybe I as a teacher had written out the answer, but I want to share that with my students. How could you share it digitally? Well, you could still go and open your EquatIO toolbar. You could still go with your screenshot reader and you could draw over that. What is very messy handwriting, okay? Plenty of room for mistake directly within that. But you'll see that what it's done is it's found the handwritten maths, it's converted it into digital maths, and now that handwritten maths that you have, or an exercise from years ago that you want to reuse with students, or that you have your students complete on a bit of paper or online, and they've taken, say, a photograph of it, now you can go back to your EquatIO toolbar in your document, and you can just paste that maths, and there you go. All the maths that was previously handwritten, that's exactly how it was justified on the page. It's exactly how it was laid out, and now that is digital. That's accessible, that's editable. So there's lots and lots of things you can do here. I'll show you just two last things really quickly on this before we jump into our Google Forms. And that's if you're a scientist. And if you're a scientist, you may well have to put some more complex maths in here. So I'm just going to show you, say something like the resistivity of copper, okay? And if you wanted to start to type that through, you might need the row symbol. So we're going to start to type RH, and there's the row symbol in there. You might also need the symbol for copper, and I'm going to go CO, right? And there's my symbol for copper. You might want to go 1.68. Now, what happens when we multiply? We can start to type multiply, or we could have put the X in. And if we want to type, say, 10, and we need the power of -8, what would we type? POW. So there's power, and we can just go -8. And now what we've got is, well, what do we want now? Okay. We want omega, and there we go. And we'll put in meters. And now what we've been able to do really quickly, without a million button presses, without any complexity, just remembering how we would say the maths, we're able to put that in. And if you take this question, this maths here that you see, this formula was created by EquatIO because we've obviously, as you've seen before, got chemical symbols and compounds within there as well. But this question is actually relatively straightforward if you're studying chemistry, because you just need to find the atomic mass of each of those and expand the pieces. So I can do that by going down to this button, and I can go STEM tools, and I can go into my periodic table, and now I can find, right, what I need to find here. I need to find calcium. That's my first element. There's calcium. I know my atomic mass is 40. Okay, so I can go right the way down here, and I can start to type 40. Oh, I can start to type 40. Okay, so I can type 40. I don't necessarily need to use EquatIO for that. I could do that. But if I then want to go back and I want to find out some of these other elements, I go to my periodic table of element, and I could say, well, actually, what was it again? Well, I can move this around. So it's N now. What is N? Let me find this on the board. That's clearly nitrogen. So I can get my atomic mass, but I can also get a visual representation of it. I can get some explanation of it, and I can explore that even more. So I could take all of those things, and at the end, once I've worked it out, I've got my scientific calculator directly built into the toolbar, so I can start to work out the math. So as a student answering maths questions, physics questions, chemical questions, or chemistry questions that involve maths, I've got all the tools that I could possibly need. So that's the deep dive into the tools. Now, I very, very quickly want to show you how you could take those tools, and I'll go through it really fast because I know we've only got about 10 minutes left, and I want to show you how we could use these tools in context. We've seen this in a Google Doc. Okay, we've been able to create all of that and imagine that in the hands of your students. We could also have done that in Google Slides. But one of the more useful ways to use this is in Google Forms. So we have embedded EquatIO into Google Forms. Now, what happens is when you have the extension installed in your toolbar, you're going to see a new little button that's going to appear beside each question and answer on your Google form, and it's just our EquatIO button. That's to remind you, you can insert maths, and to insert maths, you just press the little blue button. So let's take a couple of these examples that we went through just really quickly. So here's a question which is greater. I can click this, and you're going to see now that my toolbar now opens. So I'm just going to go do what I did earlier. So I'm going to put a third in there. So now I've got accessible maths. I've got maths that looks correct. I'm going to go down to the next part of this question. So I'm just going to click the blue button again because I want to put in some maths, and I want to put 1/2. So there's my half. So there you go. I've created a multiple choice question. Many of you will be doing that in maths. But what about some of the images? Express as a fraction. How could we use that? Well, we could go to the blue button, okay? And we could now go to the question, which is here. And instead of putting in some maths, what I could do is just go to my maths space. Remember the cube with the blue icon? And I could go and I could say, actually, I want to put a fraction bar in. And this fraction bar I want to make to be 5/8. So I can set the number of shaded segments, the total number of segments. All I have to do to put it in the form is press that button right the way up the top. And now the image that we created is popped right into the document. So remember what we also did before? We did that right angle triangle. So same again to show you how easy it is. Press the button into the shapes, into the right angle triangle. Now I'll not redraw the whole triangle out because we don't have time, but I'm going to insert that into the document. And now I've got a question which has a labeled up right angle triangle. I could resize that obviously, but I have a labeled up right angle triangle in my Google form, and it now forms the basis of my question. If we wanted to do estimations of lengths of lines, we have number lines that we can access. If we wanted to simply put something in here like solve this quadratic equation, how could we do it? Solve the quadratic equation. The quadratic equation is 4x squared plus 4x minus 4, my old favorite. I'm going to insert that in. And now your question starts to have some English text, but now it has this maths content too. So think about this. Graphs. Go to graphs. What are your coordinates? Click a graph. We'll do the same graph as we did before. Okay. And we'll just go 1, 3. And we'll insert that graph just like that. So if you pick up the tools in something like Google Docs, you can start to use this in Google Forms. So now there's our graph. That's probably a little big for that document. So one last thing we'll do is, remember we went to the PDF and we looked at this PDF and we said, well, that question would be very useful and even more useful if we could put it into a Google form so we can get students to answer the questions. So I'm going to go to my PDF. I'm going to pick up the button. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to press my 3 buttons to copy it. Okay. And don't forget, there'll be lots of videos to help you out to explore this even further. So I've copied the maths and I want to put that question in. Instead of me having to type this, I just want to reuse content I've already got. So I'm just going to go here. I'm going to paste. So all I've pressed is Command and V. I'm on a Mac, Command and V. I'll press insert. And now that's right on your screen. So that question now is on your screen from that PDF. So think about that. You've been able to create rich math. So that's good as a form. But what's even better is if I preview this form, this is what your student's going to see. So they're going to see the diagrams. They're going to see correct maths notation. They're going to see the graphs. They're going to see this grabbed from elsewhere. But what do they have? They have the blue button right here. And on the blue button, we've now got the ability for them, if they have EquatIO installed, to just hit the blue button. And then they have access, when they're answering this, to press the blue button, to use the EquatIO tools and say, I know that is 5/8. They can harness all of the tools that we have been through from their own perspective. Now, there's things we won't have time to go through today, like the mobile ability. So you could send them out a form. They want to handwrite in their A4 file block or their file block or their jotter. They want to handwrite the answers or write them on a worksheet, but you need to get them digital. They can take their mobile phone. They don't need to install an app, photograph that handwritten maths, and just like you saw earlier from the on-screen demo, they can take a photograph of that and pop it right in. Imagine they have this question. You've asked them to work out C. They've diligently written down Pythagoras' theorem and line by line. They've got the answer. They want to get it to you. All they would have to do is press that button, this button, and hold their phone up to the screen in order to take a photograph of the handwritten maths. So there's so many ways we can use this. So that's the second way. And we've got just in the last couple of minutes here, I'm going to show you Jamboard, because it's a little bit rinse and repeat, because we can do the same thing over and over again. Because if we practice on those same tools with the EquatIO extension, by opening the extension in something like Jamboard, we could take things that we've done before. So let's go something again. So we'll go 4x squared, okay, plus 4x minus 4. We can insert the maths in really easy. Just copy the maths, okay? And I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to paste it. And now the maths is going to go, the maths is going to go directly into the screen, okay? So let me copy that. Let me copy it as image and show you that again. And I'm going to paste that directly into the document. So now my maths is directly in, and I can rescale it and I can resize it. But I could also put in my graphs. So go back to my graphs. There's a graph. I'll do it really quickly. Copy the image. Go back to my document. Paste it in. Now I have my graphs that I can manipulate. So if I want to go back to my Jamboard and I want to pick up and I want to start to show where it intersects the axis, I can highlight it. I could also go in and I could do things like this. Okay, so the last feature that I'll show you on Jamboard is something like my smart shapes. I can pull up a protractor really easily. Okay, and I can insert the protractor directly into my Jamboard. Okay, so all I need to do is take the protractor, and now I have a tool here that I can use really easily. Okay, so if I want to measure angles virtually or manipulatively on screen myself, or I want to collaborate, I can do all of that. So that starts to bring us to the end of all of the tools that are there in EquatIO. There's much more to EquatIO. There's things like our ability to have a workspace, which is linked with Google Classroom. And with Google Classroom, we can create activities. So for example, I can go here and I can create, using all of the tools that you've just seen, I can create an entire workspace. So this is just a primary level piece. So all of those tools that you've just seen here, okay, there's transformations, there's volume, there's estimations, there's perimeter, there's fractions, there's money. All of those tools are available within EquatIO. once we've created those, the magic in this particular page, and again, we'll link out a video to this as we go, will be the share button, because I can create the resource. I can press the share button. I can go to continue, and right here, I can share this directly through Google Classroom. So that will create a new assignment that will inform my students. And most importantly, it'll give the students a link right within the assignment window to open that assignment, use all of the tools that we've just explored: freehand drawing, the shape tool, the clone tool, the typing tool, all of the tools that we've seen. Students then get access to complete their maths questions that have been asked of them. And once they press a button, that'll come right the way back to you in a normal Google Classroom workflow. And there's much, much more too. We could spend a whole hour just on MathSpace. But that hopefully gives you a good idea about the power of this one simple little extension. It just sits here. To me, it sits very unassuming. You can probably gather I could talk about this for at least 5 hours a day and still find something new to talk about. But I just wanted to share a couple of things as we go. Remember that the EquatIO extension is much more than that. The last piece I just showed you gives you the ability to create maths work in the way you've seen, or to even grab maths content from elsewhere, like your PDFs, your web pages, or your Khan Academy videos. Anywhere you can find maths, you can grab it from and reuse it. Assign maths work through Google Classroom. Give the tool to your students the ability to complete work either in Google Forms or directly within MathSpace that you saw there on that canvas. And one thing that I didn't get to mention there was, because students are submitting that work back to you, you've got the ability to assess student work, because you have the freehand tools to mark or correct and provide rich and powerful feedback. So there's a complete workflow here in just this one simple extension. So we've put together a number of resources. I'm just going to share 2 with you now, and I know Kevin is thankfully going to share those links with you. So one of the things that, sorry, so it's in the chat there, Kevin, is it?
Yeah, it's coming in there.
Text.help/more EquatIO. That's a Wakelet, a text help. We love Wakelet, at least I love Wakelet, and that will give you a wealth of resources. So playlists for YouTube, some explanations on MathSpace, where to get the extension, how to download it. You can get that for 30 days. And then by all means, absolutely do chat to Kevin and the team there about taking that forward. But that'll at least get you started with EquatIO. There's everything you could ever need in terms of resources there. And there's one other resource that I'm going to mention. I think we're just going to post a link to that as well. And this is a ThingLink. If you haven't seen ThingLink, fabulous tool, interactive tour of an extension. And we use this in order to show people like yourself who maybe haven't seen the tools before, if you press this button, what would happen? And actually, most importantly, we circulate that to our pupils and students, because they can then explore the extension without fear of breaking anything or anything going wrong. And they can click through all of the icons and find out what they do and how it can help them. So the ThingLink link, that's almost a mouthful, that Kevin's going to share with you, is going to be in your chat window, and do grab a hold of that link. That will take you to ThingLinks for all of the Chrome products that we do. You can explore EquatIO right there. You can deep dive into all of the tools before you even download it. Then you can use your 30 days wisely to download that and use all of the extensions. So with that, I just want to thank you for attending today. I know there's a lot of information in there. It's very exciting.
Before you wrap up, Patrick, we do have a question. I wanted to give you a chance to answer. We did have a question on how EquatIO works on an iPad, and I know that there's some functionality, but every tool is a little different.
Yeah, so EquatIO on an iPad works directly within the Safari browser. So if we go back to this, which is the web address that we have in here, so equatio.texthelp.com, this is what we call MathSpace. The space is for maths. This opens on any browser, and Safari is fully supported. So the toolbar opens just the same as it does on a Chrome browser in an iPad. So to give you an example on that, if I as a teacher had created this wonderful resource and I shared it with all my students through Classroom, you got students on Chromebooks, you've got students on using a Mac with Chrome, you've also got students with an iPad. They simply click the link in Classroom, it'll open just like you see it now, and they'll have access to all of these tools along the bottom of the screen. They have no extension to install, nothing to do except sign in with their school ID, and they're good to go.
Perfect. And a typical question, can a school get a subscription for EquatIO?
I think you're best placed to answer that one, Kevin, but absolutely they can. And I talked about accessibility there, and that's useful for some students, but EquatIO is useful for all of your students, any level of maths content that they may be studying at whatever level. So yes is the answer, and that's how we generally deploy. So we start. We'll deploy to teachers and we'll deploy to all students, and that's a subscription model. It's annual. I'm not going to talk about money because I have no idea about money because I only do the teach and learning thing. So Kevin, we'll leave that question for somebody else to address. But absolutely, that's and it's a simple deployment, Kevin. With all the wonderful work you guys have been doing with Google Schools across the country, deployment is easy. Deployment on Google Admin Console, and every student has it. And then coupled with that discoverability piece that we do, where it goes, whoa, you're looking at some maths in your Google Docs. Do you want some help? I think it makes it even easier to roll it out to a body of students. So yeah, long answer to a short question. Yes.
Fantastic. Well, Patrick, I love today's session. Every time I see EquatIO, there's something new that I never saw before. That ability to grab those questions right from a PDF is going to be such a time saver for teachers. I mean, that alone is worth the price of jam. So thanks a lot for showing the new stuff as
No
well
problem.
as what we've known about EquatIO for years, which is just such a good tool for getting teachers to be able to cross that math digital divide that we see so often.
Totally.
And I want to thank you on behalf of our South African and international audience, Patrick, for bringing some of that Irish charm to our webinars. We really appreciate it. So I hope you have a great afternoon. I hope all of you enjoyed watching today's session. And again, a big thank you to us, Patrick, from us
Thank you.
to you.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Great. Take care.